Hello and welcome to the Sana Psychological Podcast, your safe space for connection, healing, and growth. Each episode, our experienced clinicians and special guests will share strategies, stories, and resources to support your unique path to well-being. Because at Sana, your mental health matters. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Sana Psychological Podcast, where we explore ideas that help you better understand yourself and the world around you. I'm your host, Paige Abbott, and today we're diving into something that's often misunderstood, and that's the topic of introversion. If you've ever felt drained after social events, preferred deep conversations over small talk, needed time alone to recharge, these are all indications that you might be introverted. I know for a lot of us introverts out there, myself included, some of these characteristics and traits may get labeled differently in our own brain and in our own judgment. A lot of introverts may find themselves being quite judgmental towards themselves. They may feel weird, they may feel odd, they may feel unusual, because we often hold ourselves to the standard of being extroverted. So being the loud one in the room, being the social butterfly, being well socially connected. So this idea of needing to focus on quality over quantity in relationships, needing to take time for yourself can feel misaligned with that. And over the years, I've noticed a lot of introverts put pressure on themselves to basically be extroverted. And they just find themselves in this energetic deficit that's quite painful. When we're trying to force ourselves to be someone or something that we're not, it's draining. It comes at a cost. So in this episode, we're going to unpack what it means to be an introverted person, how it shows up in everyday life, the strengths that come with it, and how you can lean into those strengths. So I'm really excited to get into this. I guess a little bit of a personal background. I'm very introverted, and I really didn't know the concept or just that understanding of personality until probably my late teenage years, early 20s. I think I was in university at that point, already sort of in psychology and moving towards that goal of being a therapist. And I don't remember, just maybe at a library or something, I picked up this book, and it truly was one of those books that felt like it changed my life. It was called The Introvert Advantage. And who is the author again? I think it was Marty Olson Laney was her name. So thank you, Marty Olson Laney. You changed my life. It was just the right book at the right time. You know it when it happens. This wasn't something I was out seeking. It just kind of fell in my lap, and man, did I need that. The subtitle of the book is actually How Quiet People Can Thrive in an Extrovert World. It's a bit of an older book now, came out in the early 2000s, but I just really appreciated the information in it. It felt like it gave me clarity on who I was. And wow, who doesn't need clarity on who we are? I just remember going through different elements of the book and going, wow, this is me. I guess I am introverted. I'm not just weird or socially isolated or rude or whatever I had judged myself to be. It helped give me permission more than anything to just start meeting myself where I'm at. And that's a message that I hope those of you listening will really try and absorb, is that message and that encouragement to meet yourself where you're at, to stop trying to be something or need something other than who you are. Introversion is a core personality trait. It is something that may experience some shifting over time. How much shifting happens really depends on the person, their life, their experiences. But generally, most people kind of sit comfortably where they are, meaning if you're an introvert, you'll probably still have a lot of those core introverted tendencies throughout your life, even if you become a little bit more outgoing or extroverted. And same thing, if you're more extroverted, you still have some of those core personality traits within you even if you get more comfortable with kind of more time on your own, deeper quality relationships over quantity. So there is movement on that personality spectrum. How much movement happens, again, really depends on the person. But at the end of the day, if we just keep connecting and tuning into who are we, where are we at today, that helps give us that clarity on what we need and who we are. So, introverts, it's really important to understand it is just a personality trait. So, this isn't something that we can just pick and choose, turn off or on. It's built into your core wiring. Introverts tend to recharge often by spending time alone or in low stimulation environments. Extroverts tend to recharge by being around others and sometimes in those more higher stimulating environments. So, this doesn't mean that introverts dislike people or even that they're shy or socially anxious. Those are kind of different conditions that even extroverts can have. In fact, many introverts are pretty socially skilled and enjoy meaningful interactions with people. The key difference lies in how those interactions affect energy. Introversion does exist on a spectrum, so most people aren't purely introverted or extroverted. They fall somewhere in between. But at the end of the day, we want to have some general understanding of where we might fall on that continuum because introversion and extroversion really speaks to, again, how we recharge and how we rebuild our energy. So knowing what we need, especially after our longest and most stressful and hardest days, is really quite important. If, again, with like a technological device like a phone, if we're plugging it into the wall with the wrong charger, it's not going to charge. Its battery is going to remain low. And that's true if we are trying to plug ourselves in, so to speak, and recharge ourselves using the wrong cord. If I'm an introvert trying to recharge myself like an extrovert, I'm just going to keep being more drained. My battery is going to keep going lower and lower. Whereas if I get the proper cord, now I'm actually able to recharge. This idea of introversion dates quite far back into the earlier days of psychology, psychological thought, and writing, and is particularly connected with the work of Carl Jung, who you may have heard of in sort of the early 20th century. So, Jung talked about introversion and extroversion as fundamental ways that people orient themselves towards the world. So, either more inward towards thoughts and reflection, which is more the introverted side, or outward toward people and activity. Later, as this concept sort of evolved and was talked about more, became included in other personality frameworks like the Big Five personality traits. And over time, researchers have just continued to expand on Jung's ideas, showing that introversion has biological components. So there can be a sensitivity, a literal kind of biological sensitivity to stimulation and differences in how the brain processes things, including reward. How does introversion show up day to day? It can look a number of different ways. Some of the core ways to identify it within yourself or within others is preferring one on one or small group conversations over larger group interactions. If you find you're someone who can talk really openly when you're with one or two or three people, and you notice you progressively shut down more and more as more people enter the room, this may be a sign of that introverted tendency. Other signs of introversion can include feeling quite mentally drained after longer social interactions. I hear from a lot of introverted people, they feel like their social window is kind of like 1.5 to 3 hours. And I can definitely relate to this. I almost chuckle when, like clockwork, when I'm out with friends and I'm socializing or with anybody, after about 2 hours, I'm looking at my clock and going, oh, yeah, okay, it's been 2 hours. I can feel that. Even if it's a really enjoyable interaction, I can just start to notice I'm feeling a bit more disconnected. I start to feel foggy. Even just my smile starts to feel kind of fake and forced because I'm starting internally to shut down a little bit. My body, my brain is feeling quite overstimulated and just needs to start moving into sort of this quiet recuperation. And so just sitting there, continuing to smile and talk and laugh and engage can feel really challenging. Interestingly, I actually don't feel that drained after hours in my day spent in therapy. And that's also a key difference between introverts and extroverts, that doing something like therapy is really generally quite deep, meaningful, personal connection. I also do just individual therapy, so it's one-on-one connection. And so that sort of interaction can actually be quite rejuvenating in a way for introverts because they really value the deep, the meaningful, the real, the intimate. Introverts really don't like small talk. So, parties where there's lots of new people, lots of superficial interactions to be had are an introvert's kryptonite. That is not the place that they want to be, that feeds their soul, that lights them up. We'll do it, but hopefully moving forward, you can do it with some different ideas in mind of how to support yourself rather than just go in, get drained, and leave. Introverts may need more quiet time to think and reflect. They really like time to process things. So I always kind of think and joke that an introvert would ideally like 24 hours to process the last 24 hours. But of course, we don't have that time. So we make do. We try and make the most of our processing and our reflection when we can. But again, if we're not giving ourselves time to do that, often then that processing can push into when an introvert is actually wanting to sleep or rest or do something else. So trying to build that processing and reflection time into your day and into your routine is really important. I think for me, that's part of why I quite enjoy working at the office versus working from home. I know the quick commute when you're working at home is nice, just 2 seconds to move to a different room or a different floor, but that actually shortens that processing time. So if you are an introvert who works or studies at home, there is a lot that comes out of that you may need to process, maybe building in some reflection, decompression time at the end of your day as a buffer could be helpful. Introverts tend to enjoy more solitary activities, so reading, writing, creative work, things that take them more within themselves and their own experience. And they're definitely quite thoughtful, so thinking before speaking rather than processing out loud. An introvert may not say a lot, but generally what they say is pretty well thought out and pretty concise because they've taken their time to reflect, consolidate information, and bring that forward. It's worth noting that introversion is definitely not the same as social anxiety. Social anxiety involves fear or distress of social situations. Introversion is a preference for lower stimulation. So, an introvert may have social anxiety, but an extrovert may have social anxiety. These are an added condition that isn't a guarantee just based on that personality and temperament. What are some strengths of being an introvert? Again, that's what that book that I read many years ago, The Introvert Advantage, really helped me start to open my mind up to, because I always felt like who I was, which was described as shy, felt like a liability rather than a strength. And I just loved being able to reframe and see that there's so many valuable attributes connected with being an introvert rather than just viewing it as a negative thing. So, what are some of those strengths? I hope that you'll reflect on what you view as some of the strengths of introversion for yourself. But I think a few common ones that come up. One is that ability to really deep focus. So, introverts are often really excellent at sustained concentration and focus. This can make us really strong problem solvers as well as creators. Introverts are quite thoughtful. So, because we tend to reflect a lot before speaking, introverts do bring a depth and intention to conversations that a lot of people really appreciate, both personally as well as professionally. I think people think introverts don't make good leaders, and I would strongly disagree with that, that introverts may have a different leadership style and approach, but it's built behind that deep focus, that thoughtfulness, strong listening skills. Introverts usually listen more than they talk. So, this can make us more empathetic and lead to more insightful conversations. So, there's a lot of value and strength that introverts can bring to positions that you may think are best relegated to extroverts. That's definitely not the case. And that's something that Susan Cain's book Quiet talks quite a bit about is introversion in more of the workplace and the professional and academic domain. What are some of the strengths and how can that quiet strength show up as an asset in those environments? Introverts are often quite independent. So, because we're comfortable being alone, this can foster a feeling of self reliance and as well bring about that sense of creativity. We're okay to be bored. Within that boredom, we can reflect, we can process, we can start to brainstorm what do we want to do to take care of ourselves. Being in that situation doesn't feel threatening or draining. It can actually feel exciting with the possibilities that are there. Introverts also can have very deep and meaningful relationships. We may have smaller social circles. I find a lot of introverts mention liking to have about 2 to 5, like really close friends and relationships. But those relationships are often very deep, authentic, and may end up being quite long lasting because of that. So these strengths are incredibly valuable, and there's so much more. Introverts, we just bring this depth, this thoughtfulness, this intentionality, connection, authenticity, listening, congruence to life, to relationships that's really beautiful. If you're an introvert yourself and you've struggled to see and really embrace the positive side of this, I hope that you'll pause maybe right after you listen to this or at some time later and just really start reflecting on yourself, your personality. What are the strengths in that rather than viewing that as any sort of weakness or liability? I want you to come forward and move forward, feeling a sense of empowerment about who you are and working with who you are rather than fighting against it. I hope that moving forward, if you identify as an introvert or if you come to learn about your introverted self, that you'll embrace it and start understanding your energetic balance. Instead of forcing yourself into constant social engagement, I hope you'll give yourself permission to recharge in whatever ways truly recharge you. Build routines that include quiet time. Choose environments that suit your temperament. Change the boundaries of engagement with certain situations in order to really work with who you are and not fight against that. You certainly don't need to become more extroverted to succeed in life. You just need to work with your natural tendencies and not against them. If you're interested in exploring more, as I had said, the Marty Olson-Laney book, The Introverted Advantage, might be worth checking out. Quiet by Susan Cain, as well as her TED Talk, The Power of Introverts, might be worth checking out. If you're curious to explore whether you are an introvert or not, using personality typing frameworks like the Big Five or the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator might be worth exploring, whether on your own or with the support of a professional, just to get some clarity on where you may fall on that spectrum of introversion. Just do your own research. There's lots of blogs, posts, sharing out there that might strike you as quite interesting as you learn a little bit more about this. You might also try doing some journaling or reflection work about your energy levels, looking at what drains you and what really restores you. And over time, some patterns will emerge that will help you better understand yourself. So today, our goal was not to cover all parts of introversion. That would take forever and ever and ever. I look forward to some future episodes where I definitely would like to delve into more specific parts of living as an introvert and taking care of our energy. But for today, wanted to introduce you to that more general concept, get you thinking and reflecting on where you might fall on that personality spectrum, and hopefully giving yourself permission to work more with who you are rather than trying to force yourself or pretend that you're someone other than you are. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, you may want to consider sharing it with someone who might need a reminder that quiet doesn't mean anything less. It just means different. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to talking with you next time. Thank you for listening to the Sana Psychological Podcast. We're glad you joined us today. For more resources, free tools, or to book a session with our team, visit sanapsychological.com. Your mental health is our priority. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and take good care.